It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. My Clone How Commander for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're continuing our Final Fantasy content, and today we're taking a look at Noctis, Prince of Lucis, a 4-mana Esper 4/3 human noble with lifelink, and it says you can cast artifact spells from your graveyard by paying 3 life in addition to all their other costs. If you can't spell this way, though, it comes with a finality counter. Remember, a finality counter says if it were to leave the battlefield, if it were to go to the graveyard, it would be exiled instead. That's what the finality counter is going to do. So Noctis is, I think, fairly straightforward, but I think we need to determine what the goal is, right? Because I think casting artifacts from your graveyard is a great effect, right? It's going to really help us out, especially because there's a lot of things you can do with your graveyard once they hit, or your artifacts once they hit the graveyard. But what does that mean? Well, there's the higher end of this deck once you get up towards bracket 4. That's just going to be about strictly comboing. We'll talk about it at the end of the video, how we can combo. But I think we just want to pay off artifacts, especially artifacts that have key ETB abilities or things that care about artifacts entering. And then we have ways to take off the finality counters. So then the artifacts can go back to the graveyard and come back again, which is a key thing when we talk about the combo of why some of our combos. I want to say a quick thank you to the channel member. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a teeny bit early, consider checking that out down below. Okay, well, as far as the artifacts in our deck, you're going to see a wide range of them, right? You're going to have things like Ethereum Sculptor and Foundry Inspector, your artifacts that reduce the cost of the artifacts you've cast. We have value artifacts like Baleful Strix that can draw us a card and it's a creature, so that can be useful, especially, right, since it has Death Touch, right? So it could be a nice blocker for us. Things like Ornament of Paradise can tap for mana, Kappa Cannoneer over the course of a couple turns can become a real threat, growing and being unblockable every time another artifact comes in. Phyrexian Metamorph is an example of an artifact that can come in as a copy of any other artifact or creature on the battlefield. It can be really helpful depending on what's sitting on the battlefield. Also note this doesn't say that we control, which I think is huge for things like Metamorph, because yeah, most of the time we want to plan Metamorph to come in as a copy of something we control, but knowing that it can come in as a copy of anything is useful depending on what our opponents have, right, as well. Thought Monitor is an example of an artifact with a great entrance ability, being able to come in and draw us 2 cards, and it's a little bit cheaper for each artifact we control, which is a huge deal. I would love a world where Thought Monitor can come back for just a single blue from our graveyard and just draw us a couple cards. Bull Citadel can let us play spells off the top. We just have to pay life equal to its mana value rather than its mana cost. This could be really beneficial, especially if we want to make our deck to gain life to offset the cost of paying from the graveyard. I think both Citadel is very easy to take advantage of. Mindstone's an example of an artifact that you can pay to do an effect and then get back. So we can pay 1 and tap it to sack it to draw a card. And then Noctis could always get it back, right? So basically now you're creating a loop of artifacts where you can do something every turn and get them back for more value. Sculpting Steel, another example of it can come as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield, so not just ours. The Synthesizer is a really fun artifact that can really help us out. Whenever an artifact with mana value 3 or greater comes in, we get to make a construct that gets +1/+1 for each artifact we control. So if we can manage to get all these 3 mana artifacts coming in, we're going to get value there. I think it would only be right that we play the Regalia with Noctis, right? Of course, being Noctis's car in the game. And whenever the Regalia attacks, we get to reveal cards on the top until we hit a land, put on the battlefield, tap it, put the rest on the bottom. So this is a great way to help ramp, especially in our colors like Esper, where truly the only way to ramp most of the time is just drawing cards and getting access to more lands. Tezzeret is an example of a planeswalker that can get us a lot of value for the amount of artifacts we have, right? The +2 deals X damage to each opponent. We gain X, where X is the number of artifacts we control. So over the course of the game, this is going to get bigger and better, really hurting our opponents. The only downside, right, is that Tezzeret isn't an artifact, so not like we can play him from the graveyard, but we have other ways to recur things in our deck. Emery lets us cast artifact from our graveyard without needing that 3 life from Noctis. We can only just do it once per turn because we have to tap Emery in order to target the artifact. But I think this is still useful to maybe you need to get an artifact at the right time and you don't really want the finality counter on it. Emery can help us out with this. Imitek the Stormlord, a 4 mana legendary creature that says whenever one or more artifacts leave our graveyard, we make some Necron Warrior tokens. Well, here we go. Here's a way to make some tokens for something we already want to be doing anyway, right? These artifacts leaving our graveyard, and that's really helpful. And then at the start of combat, it hands out Menace, which isn't a bad thing, especially for maybe some of our creatures that grow or can become real threats on their own. Mannequin Core starts the engines when it comes in and gets to grow for each artifact we control. And then if we can hit max speed, we can pay a mana to copy every artifact we cast. This is really interesting because this can really help us out playing certain artifacts, getting a second copy of them, and really just taking off. And of course, it's hard to talk about a artifact deck without talking about Urza to some extent, right? We're playing two of probably my favorite versions of Urza, the Esper Urza in the middle, having affinity for artifact creatures. Hopefully, it's going to come in pretty cheap, giving all of them menace, and then giving us a construct to each of our end steps. And then, of course, the OG Urza, the one that everybody knows and loves or hates, makes the construct when it comes in, lets you tap artifacts for blue mana, and then that big ability to pay 5, shuffle your library, exile the top card, and play that card without paying its mana cost. So both are very useful, making the constructs, which are huge tokens that can really get out of hand, then each adding their own little value to the board. Thoughtcast, Voyage Home, these are examples of spells that hopefully are going to get really cheap for how many artifacts we have, drawing us some cards, digging a little bit deeper into the deck, and allowing us to see access to more things. And then I love an option like Desynchronization, returning each non-land permanent that's not historic to its owner's hand. Remember, all artifacts are historic, so most of our cards should be safe there. And then all legends are historic, so Noctis is going to be safe to Desynchronization, and hopefully we can make it really one-sided to hurt our opponents. Dispatch is basically going to become a copy of Swords to Plowshares for us. Normally we just tap a creature, but if we have 3 more artifacts, it just exiles that creature. This is a huge piece of removal that a lot of people aren't going to see coming unless they're used to artifact decks and can be really useful for us. Cranial Plating buffs a creature for each artifact you control. It actually allows you to attach it instant speed, which is huge. Especially, for example, these constructs maybe that you can make through some of these cards. Maybe one goes through unblocked, and you can just hit the cranial plating out to basically double its power and make it a real threat to hit somebody. Right? Machine its arsenal, makes the hero token, and gives it +2/+2 for each artifact you control. Or you can equip it to something, giving it +2/+2 for each artifact you control, and just make something a really nice threat to our opponents over the course of a game. Right? But I think the last thing that's kind of turned in our deck to being really useful is finding a way to remove those finality counters. Because, yeah, I mean, getting the artifacts back is great, but I think we really want to root the counter so that we can either sacrifice it or do something with it and then get it back again. And there's a lot of ways to do it. Hex Parasite can remove it, give it a little bit of a buff. Awaka can do it by tapping to draw a card. Soul Diviner can tap to remove a counter to draw a card. So you start to see that it's not just straight remove it, we can get it for some value. Power Conduit can do it to put a counter on a creature. Solemnity will just stop the counter being put on altogether. Solemnity is a very interesting card. So counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands, and players can't get counters. This is a very effective way to stop the finality counters. But the only problem with Solemnity that you may run into is that this is going to shut off all counters, meaning that this is if you're playing against a deck that cares about counters, it's going to very quickly get removed, and you're going to lose a little bit of what you want from Solemnity. So as much as it's great, it does a really great job. It's probably going to be a big target, whereas things like a Walker, Soul Diviner, Power Conduit, or Nesting Grounds that just move a counter from permanent onto another permanent, aren't as big of a deal. Now with Nesting Grounds, what I think is really fun is that you can move all those finality counters to Noctis, because as soon as Noctis leaves the battlefield, it's just going back in the command zone. So all those finality counters aren't going to matter, and you don't have to worry about losing Noctis to any stray thing, because Noctis just gets the ability to go back to the command zone. Okay, well, how do we combo? And truthfully, I think this is where the power level of this deck is going to matter. What I mean by that is this. So there are multiple 0 mana artifacts, very expensive ones, that say that when they come in, unless you do something, they immediately get sacrificed. And the reason that line of text is important is because if you don't do that thing, they never actually hit the battlefield. Especially, let's say if it was a cast trigger, they would actually never actually hit the battlefield, although you would still be count as casting something. The reason that's important is for Aetherflux Reservoir. It says whenever you cast a spell, you gain a life for each spell you've cast before at this turn. So remember, we're always taking a 3 life loss to Noctis to cast a spell, but remember, once we hit a certain number of spells, we're now no longer going negative on the life every time we cast a spell, right? Especially with Aetherflux, right? On that 4th spell, we're a net 0, and so forth. So the ideal combo here is you get a reservoir down, and you would go for one of those big money artifacts. Remember, we're doing this on a budget, so that's not really an option. So we got to look for other ways we can do this. And I think the easiest way is Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is an artifact that says if a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, you just straight up counter it. Still counts as being cast for the purposes of Flux Reservoir, but it never hits the battlefield, never gets the finality counter. So we've included a couple of 0 mana artifacts in the deck, as many as we can to still stay in a decent budget, and there are a few more if you want to up the budget to allow us to Vexing Bauble and do this combo. What this is effectively going to do is you cast these spells over and over again. You have to pay the life with Noctis. Remember, you get it back right away because of a Flux Reservoir, and then net enough life to pay its bottom ability to just laser our opponents out of the game. Um, I think also, right, we have the option to just use our constructs as really big threats to our opponents as well, and we have lots of ways in the deck to make those. But I think as you take this deck from bracket 3 to bracket 4, you're going to find more ways to enable this combo and these types of combos to end the game. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Noctis. And I think going into testing, especially if I was going to want to up the budget of this deck or the bracket of this deck, I think I'd be looking for more 0 mana artifacts we can take advantage of. Things like Welding Jar and Mox Amber and Mox Opal. These 0 mana artifacts that are going to be able to work for our combo line. We could also look at something like the One Ring, allowing us to draw cards with it, right, and get more value. The One Ring's a great artifact, and it's really useful, and allows us to draw a bunch of cards. But I didn't include Lion's Eye Diamond or some of the more expensive artifacts that if you want to go towards bracket 4, I think you're going to be playing and taking real advantage of. Let's do what we love to do the most on the channel and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find a magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of start to understand what we're looking for in our hands and how we're going to set up our boards. Here we've got a 3-lander with Ornithopter. So there's an example of a 0 mana artifact we can get back. Baleful Strix is an artifact that draws us a card. We see Psy, which can make Thopters as we cast artifact spells. That's pretty cool. And then we see Urza up there on the top end. Thing to note about Urza is that it has affinity for artifact creatures, doesn't say non-token, so Psy could be a really useful way to get up to Urza and get him started, and Urza's a nice, great piece for us. So here, turn 1, we see Soaring. The actually only problem is all 3 of my lands are going to come in tapped at the moment. So let's just get a tap land in and go from there. Now here on turn 2, we have the exact same problem. Now Sanctum will come in untapped next turn, so I think we just do the Rise. And I thought it's like Soaring plus Power Conduit. Now we have a way to get rid of the Fanatic counters if we need to, and we're increasing our ability of things to do. So here, if I play Psy and I cast this Talisman, I can get a Thopter, which seems like a good idea. I can play the Ornithopter now and get the Thopter from it, right? That's an option now too. I mean, I was kind of trying to wait until we had something to profit from the Ornithopter and not just to run it out there. My thought process here is if I play the Talisman, I get the Thopter, right? And then I could play Baleful Strix this turn too, right? Get me another Thopter, and the Baleful Strix draws me a card. And now I've got, what, 3 artifact creatures? So now, Urza's coming down just for Wooburg, which we can't do this turn. Right, I would need one other colored source, and I don't have it. But that's okay. We can run the Ornithopter if we want to out as well, just to get another Thopter. We can decide what we want to do there. But the whole point is right now we're setting up our board, right? So now that we come to the next turn, we see Inventor Sphere. If we can draw 3 more artifacts on our upkeep, we gain a life. We could pay for it to sack it to go get any artifact put into our hand. This could be really useful, right? To go find the reservoir That's what we want to do. But I like Urza here. Come down, these guys all get menace now, and now we're going to start generating those constructs on our end step. I've got 4 mana left. We could sacrifice with side to draw cards if we don't want to, but it doesn't really make too much sense to me. I think I would just get attacking and then make that construct. Right now, that construct is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's an 8/8 right now. So you can start to see these constructs are going to become a really big threat. And as long as nobody deals with Urza, which is the thing that's making us the constructs right coming to our turn, we're going to gain a life off of Inventor's Fair. It may not be a bad idea to go use the fair right now. My thought is either use the fair to go get Aetherflux Reservoir, or we could use the fair to go get something like Bolus's Citadel even as well, right? To start digging, right? We have plenty of options we can do. Teferi Time Raveler is an interesting card. Stops our opponents from casting things, except they can only cast them at sorcery speed. Pretty cool. Forces our opponents to do things on their turn, help out with interacting with things on our turn. But truthfully, we just need to find a way to draw some cards. And Teferi does have a fun option here with its ability. It allows us to bounce something back to its owner's hand to draw a card. We could bounce something like Ornithopter and play it again, right, to get cards. Or we could, bounce something like Baleful Strix and play it again, right, to get cards. The only problem with this philosophy is that it causes Teferi to -3 in order to draw us a card, and then we can't do that every turn, right? So there's a little bit of options there. We could also try to find something with Inventor's Fair that could draw us cards as well. So there are some options at this point. Sai could also just sack a couple Thopters to draw us cards, but I don't really want to do that because I think the constructs are becoming a really nice threat right now. I don't really want to do that. So I think I'd probably just look to do this Teferi game plan for now. Go down to 1 to bounce the Baleful Strix back to our hand, play the Baleful Strix, make a Thopter, and draw 2. And that actually works really well because that basically just completely landed us into Thought Monitor, which gives another Thopter and draws 2. Right, and now we're just trying to dig even further, right, through our deck. Maybe now we have enough Thopters where we can consider, giving a couple away to Sai to do that. But I mean, until our artifacts start hitting the graveyard, it's not like we really need Noctis, although we do like Noctis, right? Because it can gain us some life back. But again, I don't mind this. I mean, we're making these constructs right now. These Thopters, right, have Menace, so they're even hitting, right, probably more guaranteed to be hitting because of the Menace from Urza than anything else. And I think we're just playing a really interesting value game right now. The question is, can we draw into those other pieces, right, to keep the party going? And that's just going to come down to, what we draw in the next few turns, to do that. We attack with all the Thopters, we make another construct, right, and we move it into our next turn. There's the Reservoir, so that's almost perfect. Now, truthfully, right, all we need is the Bauble, right, because I can play the Reservoir. I sack this to go get the Bauble, right? And it goes into my hand. I play the Bauble, right? And then now all we need to do is get out Noctis, which I guess I realized we wouldn't have had enough mana for this turn. So maybe we wait till next turn to put the Bauble down until we can get Noctis down too. Maybe just to prevent ourselves from running our whole combo out and getting it removed at the same time. Because, right, Noctis can get Reservoir back, it can get Bauble back, but we don't want to run the risk of, losing it at the right time. Again, we could take attacks here. Sai could draw some cards by getting rid of Thopters, but truthfully, we're just in a good place ramming these constructs down our opponent's throats. And then I would say on this turn, you play the Noctis, play the Bauble. We would sacrifice 2 artifacts with Sai to draw a card, and what I would do is I would get rid of the Ornithopter and I'd get rid of a Thopter to draw a card. Now we have an artifact with 0 mana cost in our graveyard, and now we can start remember the first few casts, because we cast Noctis this turn, that means 1. We would have already gained 0 life for that one. We gain 1 life. That the first cast of the Ornithopter would get countered. That would be 2 life, but we paid 3, so we're only losing 1. The third cast, now we're going even, and now we're going positive. We're getting more Thopters because of Psi, right? So now we have more things sitting around for these constructs if that was an option. And I think you could start to see where this is where the combo line can go. And like I said, in bracket 4, we'd be adding more ways to find that combo line or combo lines like it for it. Let's get into playtest number 2 here. Keeping a 4 lander with Lotus Petal, a 0 mana rare rock that also can sacrifice to add a mana of any color, a very interesting one. Machine its arsenal, and then a counter spell. So here my thought is just work our way up the ladder. We don't, like I said, we don't need to play the pedal just yet. We could keep rocking our way up, just trying to get some pieces on board. Here, like I said, the Spy Network says that the beginning or upkeep, if we have an artifact, we get a Thopter. So we want to start making the Thopters, right? We don't have to do it this turn. Again, I like the idea of just holding up the mana, making people not sure if we have anything, right? Here on 4 is where I'd want to pay the Sky Network to get it going. Now we can play the pedal, just so that way we have one, right? So then our turn, we get the Thopter. There's the Hex Parasite, which can help take away the finality counters. I like the idea of the Arsenal, just to make that hero and start making it a real threat as we continue to grow our board. Now, Spy Network says whenever one or more of our artifact creatures hit a player in combat, we draw a card. So if nobody has a flyer, right, maybe that Thopter can hit people on future turns, right, to draw some cards. Hold the pedal up, even though we do still have, so we would have this pedal up. Hold it up for the unoffers just in case something comes up that we need to get rid of. Otherwise, I'd really like to find some way to draw cards, which I think the Spy Network will help with. Should draw us at least a card this turn. If this can manage to hit through, maybe we get another card. But right, we just don't know for sure that that's going to happen. Technically, for 3 life, I can get my Lotus Petal back every turn if that matters. So interesting line to do that there. Otherwise, this hero just keeps growing, right? It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's a +8/+8 right now, and working its way up. Might be an interesting. It might be interesting to move the Arsenal over to Noctis to give it that buffs because it has lifelink, right? Could be a reason to just net a bunch of life in case we really want to start recasting the things out of our graveyard. But okay, there's Fabricate. Fabricate's a way to just go get an artifact from our library and put it into our hand. So there's the way to get part of our combo. We basically right now need the Reservoir and we need the Vexing Bauble, right? So that's an interesting option. The unfortunate part with the pedal is that the finality counter goes on it when it enters. It's not like it's an ETB ability where we could respond by sacrificing it for mana, or anything like that to get cheeky. So we do still need to find a way to find one or the other. I mean, Fabricate does help us find one of them, but I think we still want to keep digging with like Thopter Spy Network to like find the other ones, right? To keep digging. Archwave Innovation is interesting here, letting us use Improvise to help. I like the idea of flipping this over to Noctis just to gain us a ton of life so that if we ever need to go off on this mana, we can. Otherwise, probably 1 or 2 this turn. There's the Fair. So next turn, we can use the Fair to go get one piece and the Fabricate to get the other, and then we've gotten there, right? Took us to turn 7 to get there, but again, the difference I think between bracket 3 and bracket 4 on this deck is that in bracket 3, I'm not playing a ton of ways to go find it. Whereas once I go up to bracket 4, I am going to be finding a ton of ways to go find that combo, and you'll start to see a lot more of a consistency difference between, oh, I only have 3 tutors to go find it, no, I have 10, or I have 9, or I have 8, or wherever you want to make the deck to do. And especially as you push up the top into bracket 4 where you have no budget, you're playing the best tutors, the best the 0 mana rocks. You're playing all these things that are just going to really help us out. But here on playtest number 3, we're keeping a 3-lander with a couple mana rocks, Soul Ring and Talisman, so that's great. We see Displacer Kitten, a card that says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we can blink a permanent we control. Again, great for something like Thought Monitor, right? Because that can draw some cards. So I like the look of this one. The question is, do we go like, if we go plain soaring hierarchy, I like the look of this one because now a turn two here, even though we want to get the Sanctum in tapped, uh, we don't have a blue source for Displacer Kitten, but that's okay. Now we have something like Unmarked Grave. So Unmarked Grave says we can go get a non-legendary card and put it in our graveyard, so we could start feeding our graveyard if we want to. I think in this scenario, I'd probably just make my opponents think I have something, hold something up in my hand. This turn, get the Kitten down, and I'd have 2 mana left. We could unmark something into the graveyard. The question is, what would you go get? I guess the answer is we could go for something like Reservoir, because once we get Thought Monitor down and start casting spells, I think we'll be able to start blinking Thought Monitor and drawing us cards. So there's some options there, and we could also get the Reservoir back right away with Noctis if we wanted to, or we could just wait a turn and see where we're at once we play the monitor, right? I think it'll help us determine what our next game plan quit is. Well, all right, the answer is pretty fair in Bolus's Citadel. So, 1, 2, I have 3 black sources, so I can play the Bolus's Citadel. The only downside to Thought Monitor is it is just coming down for 5 mana right now. So, I think I would just do this now. Come in, draw the 2. I could do Unmarked Grave to blink the Displacer Kitten. I have a way to find one of them, so I just need a way to go find the other one. So if I need to use the Inventor Sphere on a turn, that's 4 mana, whereas Aether Flux would be 4 mana, right? Whereas if I use the 4, my thought is like, what can I get now versus later to help me with, depending on what turn. I'm going to put the Reservoir in the graveyard. It is non-legendary. That's going to blink the Thought Monitor, drawing me 2 cards. And then move on here to the next turn. All right, so we have one of the pieces in the graveyard, so Noctis can get that back. Inventor's Sphere here can actually go get us the other one. So that's useful. Now we have both the pieces there. Play something like Cranioplating, blink the monitor to draw 2 cards. I've got, 6 mana left? I mean, Teferi or Tezzeret could be fun. +2 to dome somebody for 4, everybody for 4. Or we could use, depending on how we tapped, we actually could play the Citadel this turn as well, right? Let's say we do that. Draw 2. Remember, now we get to start playing off the top, paying in life. I don't mind doing that for the Felwar Stone, but remember, we're gonna draw 2 every time. I guess we can exile up to 1, so we don't necessarily have to. So we could go ahead and play the Felwar Stone if we want to. Otherwise, I think we're in good shape. We got to pitch down for turn, but I don't think we really mind there. I think Nesting Grounds isn't the choice. So as we come into our next turn, see Soul Diviner on top. So if I go Noctis this turn, I've got 4 mana. So I could crack no, I can't crack the Inventor Affairs because that's part of that 4 mana. I could get the Reservoir back this turn. It's set up to do the Bauble next turn, and then we're at the combo. There's a lot of ways to go now. I think that makes the most sense. Play the Reservoir out of the graveyard. Set up to go into the Bauble next turn. And this actually unlocks us another combo that we don't really talk about, but it's a really useful interaction, which is Aetherflux Reservoir and Bolus's Citadel. So remember, Bolus's Citadel lets us play the top card by paying life. Well, depending on how many spells we cast, we basically will be able to play any spell off the top with how much life we're going to pay versus the amount of life we're going to get back. So that kind of showcases, right, some nice interactions there. Like I said, I think that's the combo I would target if I was going to go up the bracket still on the power level, but I think Noctis has a huge upside for that reason, and I think a lot of people are going to probably mess around with that. But I'd love to know what you think of Noctis down in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.